Hey there, and welcome to Scary Tales. Tonight's stories will take you on a chilling ride down dark, lonely roads. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you enjoy these eerie tales, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to keep the horror coming. Now sit back, relax, and let's begin the stories. Story number 1. I've been a trucker for 10 years, working for various companies. 3 years ago, I was employed by a warehouse company in Kansas, handling shipments. On February 2nd, a cold Monday, I started my shift at 3 p.m., determined to reach my destination that same night. The roads were quiet, and I pushed the speed limit slightly, eager to avoid pulling over for rest. As the night deepened, fatigue set in. My eyes burned, struggling to stay open. I splashed water on my face, trying to shake off the exhaustion. The road was pitch black, my headlights the only source of illumination. Then, as I reached for my water bottle, I almost choked. Up ahead, a figure was approaching fast. I slammed the brakes, my truck skidding as it slowed. The figure became clearer, a man dressed entirely in black, a scarf wrapped around his unnaturally long neck. It was disturbing, but what truly unnerved me was his face, or rather the lack of one. His features were blurred, impossible to make out. As my truck rolled closer, I hesitated, about to roll down the window to ask if he needed help. But before I could, he turned sharply and bolted into the woods. Without a second thought, I pressed the gas and continued, my heart pounding. 20 seconds later, the fear truly hit me. Just as I began calming down, something else happened. A dark shape darted across the road. At first I thought it was an animal, but as I got closer, I realized it looked like another person. This time I didn't slow down. I sped up, my unease growing. Fatigue continued to wear on me, and I found myself swerving into the other lane. With about 40 minutes left in the drive, I admitted defeat and looked for a place to pull over. Eventually, I spotted a small gravel rest stop and parked my semi. Leaning back, I closed my eyes, and exhaustion took over. I wasn't asleep for long, maybe an hour, when something jolted me awake. The cab was dark, the world outside silent, my gut twisted with unease. Without thinking, I reached for the headlights and flicked them on. There, standing in front of my truck, was the same man, the long-necked figure from earlier. But now, I could see his face clearly. His mouth was stretched into an impossibly wide grin, and his eyes were unnaturally wide, locked onto mine through the windshield. Panic surged through me. I turned the ignition, my hands shaking, and tore out of that rest stop as fast as my truck would allow. The drive felt endless, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. How had he gotten here? The last time I saw him, he was miles away. I didn't stop again until I reached my destination. That night, I passed out in the parking lot, too drained to think. The next morning, I tried convincing myself it was exhaustion-induced hallucinations. But deep down, I knew what I saw, and I knew it was real. Story number 2. Before working an office job, I spent 2 years as a UPS driver. The pay was good, but some routes were unsettling. This story happened in 2010, on a freezing winter night. My shift ran from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and by 6 p.m., darkness had already swallowed the town. I was delivering to a small town in North Carolina, a place that wasn't quite ghetto, but definitely not safe. Some areas had clusters of houses, while others were eerily isolated. My next stop was one of those, just a single-trailer home on an otherwise empty street, bordered by dense woods. The package required a signature, meaning I had to see the resident face to face. Parking outside, I grabbed the box, a large, heavy thing filled with shifting metal pieces. There were no lights on in the trailer, no car in the driveway. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again, and this time I saw movement behind the curtains. Footsteps approached, then stopped. A long pause followed before the door finally creaked open. A frail, older woman peeked out. Her behavior was odd, fidgety, almost nervous. She barely glanced at me before hastily signing for the package. Then she asked me to help carry it inside. I hesitated, but ultimately agreed. As soon as I stepped in, an overwhelming stench hit me. Every home has its own scent, but this was putrid, almost rotten. She led me down a narrow hallway, deeper into the trailer. The further I went, the more unsettled I felt. Finally, she gestured toward the dark room. "Put it in the closet," she said. I paused. "Can you turn on the light?" "It doesn't work," she replied flatly. The only illumination came from the dim lamp in the living room, barely seeping into this pitch-black space. I squinted as I maneuvered the box inside, then froze. Someone was in the closet. I couldn't see details, but the outline was unmistakable. A person, standing, waiting. Panic set in. I didn't speak. I didn't react. I simply left the box where it was, turned around, and walked past the woman, mumbling a quick goodbye. That's when she snapped. She started screaming at me to come back, her voice shrill with rage. She even called me a piece of shit. But I didn't stop. I got in my truck and drove off, my hands trembling on the wheel. I don't know what she was planning. I don't know who was in that closet, but I never delivered to that house again. And not long after, I found a new job. Story number 3. I've been a truck driver since I was 25, making countless night drives. I've had my fair share of strange experiences, but nothing compares to what happened one night in the California desert. I had a long haul ahead, transporting a trailer full of wooden furniture from one end of the state to the other. Most of the drive was through vast, open desert roads. With little traffic and endless straightaways, I pushed the truck a bit faster than usual. It was deep into the night when I spotted flashing red lights in the distance. As I got closer, I realized it was an old Chevy Impala, parked on the side of the road with its hazard lights blinking. I slowed down and pulled over behind it, figuring someone might need help. Stepping out of my truck, I approached the car and tapped on the window. No response. The windows were tinted, so I bent down to look inside. The car was empty. I straightened up, scanning the area. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. Just beyond the car, barely visible in the dark, was an abandoned gas station. Curiosity got the best of me. I retrieved my heavy-duty flashlight from the truck and headed toward the building. The front door was jammed open, creaking slightly as I stepped inside. My beam swept over the room, revealing dusty shelves and old, discarded merchandise. It looked like a typical convenience store, only long forgotten. Then I heard it. A faint scuffing noise, a shoe scraping against the floor. I aimed my flashlight toward the source, behind a row of shelves. "Hello?" I called out. "Do you need help?" Silence. Then, a deep, heavy whisper cut through the darkness. "Get out." A chill shot through me. My heart pounded as I realized I could hear breathing, deep, labored breathing coming from one corner of the store. That was enough. I bolted for the door, not stopping until I reached my truck. As I climbed in, something strange happened. The Chevy Impala's engine roared to life. Before I could react, it sped off into the darkness, kicking up dust as it vanished down the empty road. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, struggling to explain where I was. An abandoned gas station, somewhere in the desert, I stammered. Then, despite my fear, I made a reckless decision. I ran back inside. I don't know why. I think I just needed to confirm that I hadn't imagined everything. But as I reached the spot where I'd heard the whisper, I froze. A fresh pool of blood stained the floor. My stomach twisted. Whatever had happened here, I had just missed it. I told the dispatcher what I found, and soon state troopers arrived. I gave them what little information I had, the make of the car, the whispering voice, the scream I heard as the car sped away. There was no body, only the blood. I had no idea what had happened, but I knew it wasn't good. A week later, I installed a dash cam in my truck. I never wanted to be caught off guard like that again. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.